Okay, so worst case scenario, the virtual teaching plan I had today for me being gone and you guys being at school did not work. So now you're forced to watch this video of me just doing the notes, and I apologize. But I'm really hoping that we got virtual to work out. Those of you that are just home on your own quarantine, um, certain circumstances have arose or arised. I don't know what you use there. We'll have to ask Mrs. Meyer. Where I'm going to be out for several days. So I'm going to try to really figure out a solid virtual teaching situation. So again, if you're absent for your own reasons, you're watching this video. If you're actually in school, hopefully you're not watching the video and we were able to get the virtual situation figured out. But neither here nor there, I got to do this video. So frequency tables, hopefully you were able to get all this glued in accordingly while you were home yesterday. And we're going to start out with this blank page. We have some vocabulary about frequency tables. Okay. Frequency of an event is our first vocab. It's actually our only vocab. Okay. So what this is the number of times something happens. Right? So the number of times that something takes place, that's the frequency of our event. Okay, so it seems kind of weird right now, but it'll all make sense once we work in there. But I just want to make sure you guys have the vocabulary there. So now what we're going to do is focus on two-way tables and how they work. Two-way frequency tables. Okay, so we've got our two-way frequency tables, and now you're going to have to draw a frequency table. So let me go ahead and do my best to draw this. And then what you can do is pause the video as needed. So we've got play an instrument, play a sport, right? And so then we've got yes, no, total, yes, no, total. So the way these work is that you would ask a group of people, hey, do you play an instrument? Do you also play a sport, right? So you'd keep track, and then you would put totals into which category people fell into. So maybe we would have 64 people said yes here, 118, 93, 286. So one of the things that you have to be able to do is fill in the blanks, right? So we're going to use our common sense, reasoning, logic, whatever you want to call it, skills. And you're going to use the information you have to fill in the missing values based on what you know. Okay, so I'm going to use a red pencil here, and I'm going to fill in these missing values of, using my amazing math skills. So I could easily find out what this is because the yes plus the no here is going to give me this total of this row. So if I take 118 and I subtract 64, I find out that 54 people do play a sport but don't play an instrument. That's what that little box there stands for. And then I could do this column here. If I know that this plus this equals 286, I can subtract these and I can get 168. I'm going to highlight this in red here so I remember that I had to fill in the missing values in red, right? And then I can do this column here. These are all my no's here. So if I add these up, I should get this total here of 147. And then if I subtract these two, 168 minus 93 will give me 75 people surveyed that don't play a sport but do play an instrument. And then the last one here, I could get this a couple ways. I could add these or I could subtract these. I prefer adding, so it's easy to just add that 139. Okay, so I filled in the blanks based on what was missing. So if I said to you, hey, how many people play an instrument and a sport? You would say, oh, 64, because that's the number where those two meet, right? If I said, how many people don't play an instrument and also don't play a sport? You would say, oh, 93, because that's where those cross over. If I asked you how many people were surveyed, you would say 286, because that's the total people that were surveyed about both questions. So that's how we use a two-way frequency table. So I'm going to pause that. I'm going to leave that there so you can pause your screen if you need to. And now we're going to move on to another example. So similar setup. So this time the questions are, do you have a summer job? And what is your gender? Right, so I'm asking males and females, boys and girls, ladies and gents, however you want to say it. And their answers are either going to be yes, no, total. Right? So then I'm going to give you a couple numbers here. And then this is where I would advise you to pause the video and see if you can fill these in on your own and then check back. So for real, pause the video. Are y'all paused? Either you're paused or you're not. I got to move on. Okay, so I'm going to use my amazing deductive reasoning skills, and I know that something plus 57 equals 132. So this is going to be my first plan of attack. So if I subtract those, I get 75. Now I can go this way. What plus this gave me 132? Well, that's easy. 30. And then I can go this way, right? If I have 102 yeses that have summer jobs, 102 minus 57 is going to give me 45. And then 45 plus what gave me 57? Well, if I subtract those, I get 12. And then I could say, well, what plus 12 gives me 30? Or 75 minus 57 gives me what? And that's 18. Right? So now I have all this information. So if I were to ask you how many girls don't have a summer job, we would say 12. Right? If I were to say how many boys were surveyed, we could say 75 males were surveyed. If I were to say how many total people were surveyed, you would say 132, and so on. Okay? So you are going to have to do this on your own where you're given information and you got to fill in the blanks. I think you guys can handle it. Now let's move on to what I had you glue in. So I'm going to be using these three colors. I'm going to be using orange, blue, and yellow. Okay, so get those out or choose your own three colors, whatever you decide. And we're going to talk about how to find different frequencies. Okay, and there's a specific way, of course, and of course I want you to stay organized. So let's see if we can do this. I'm going to go ahead and highlight joint relative frequency orange, and it'll make sense because we're actually going to color in parts of this table. So our question says, use the two-way frequency table below to find the joint relative frequency of students surveyed who like football and are male. Okay, so we're going to use our amazing organizational skills. So to find joint relative frequency, we're going to find the ratio of the category compared to the total number of people surveyed. Okay, so the category is football boys who like football. So we're going to put that in here. Boys heart football, right? and then we're still going to have total surveyed. So then when I look at my two-way frequency table, I can say, oh, well, if I go to football and boys, they cross right here. So that is 24 that fit that category out of the total surveyed. So I look over here in the corner and I say, all right, well, 60 people were surveyed about this information. But I need this as a percent. So when I divide this, 24 divided by 60, I get 0.4, which you all know is equivalent to 40%. Okay. So there you have it, joint relative frequency. So again, take the time, don't do any shortcuts. The students that do shortcuts historically do horrible on frequencies because they can't be bothered to take the time to write the things out and get it accurate. Okay, so please, please, please take your time. All right, now let's move on to question 2. Use the two-way frequency table below to find joint relative frequencies. All right, so you know me, I like to highlight. Joint relative frequency of students who prefer sugar cookies and are girls. So I'm going to write this out again. I'm going to do category compared to total surveyed. So this is girls who love sugar cookies. Do you guys like my little hearts? I guess I can make that more obvious. Over total surveyed. And I know I'm kind of trying to write this fast. I don't know if you can see the time there on my screen, but it's 7:28 p.m. and that is Thursday night because I found out that I was going to be out for a while. So now I'm here trying to make sure that everything's ready. So that's why I'm writing a little bit quickly. So pause as needed. Okay. All right, so let's fill this in. So how many girls like the sugar cookies? Well, when we go to sugar and girls, we find 20 ladies. So that's going to be my numerator. And how many people were total surveyed? That's where this 100 comes in. Okay. So I get 0.2, which we all know converts to 20%. Okay. So that is that's the joint relative frequency of people surveyed that are female and prefer sugar cookies. Okay. Let's move on now to the next page. Again, pause as needed. Now we're going to do marginal relative frequency. So we have the same tables. We're using the same information. We're just going to find a different measurement. So I'm going to use blue for this one, marginal relative frequency. And it says use the two-way frequency table below to find the marginal relative frequency of students surveyed who are male. So how many out of the survey are boys? So this ratio is set up a little bit different. This is the total of the row or column and we're comparing that to the total surveyed. Okay, so my row or column is students who are male, right? So I'm going to go to my male row and I'm going to say, oh, well that was, so that's my male total, again over the total surveyed. So I can see on my table that there were 42 fellas surveyed about their sports out of the same total, 60 people, which happens to simplify to 0.7, which is 70%. So 70% of the people surveyed were boys. Now, if you guys had paid attention in any of your other math classes, you would probably be like, hey, that doesn't seem right. Shouldn't you have equal number of people distributed per group you're asking? And yes, you should, but it is what it is. So 70% is our marginal relative frequency that the students surveyed were boys. All right, so now let's talk about the cookies. Use the frequency table, two-way frequency table to find the marginal relative frequency of students who prefer sugar cookies. Okay, so we've got our total of row or column divided by the total surveyed. So this one is the people that love sugar cookies over total surveyed. Okay, hopefully you guys can see that okay. You guys think it's bright during the day with these lights out? Holy moly, it is so bright in here right now with these lights. Like, in fact, I had to like dim them and get kind of creative because of the glare just from the lights in the classroom. Okay, so back to the math. So how many people actually preferred sugar cookies? So we're going to look at this sugar cookie column, and that's the total of, or excuse me, yeah, sugar cookie column. The total that loved the sugar cookies was 35 out of the people surveyed. And then the total surveyed was 100 people. So we get 0.35, which of course is 35%. So 35% of the people surveyed preferred sugar cookies. I don't know who these 15 are that prefer oatmeal. I've never met a human that prefers oatmeal cookies over the other two options, but it is what it is. I'm sure there are people out there like that. Maybe you're thinking, hey, that's me. Don't make fun of me. I'm not making fun. I just think there's better desserts to be had. Okay, so there is our marginal relative frequency. Now on to, and I'll pause, so if you need to, whatever, finish copying. Okay, now we're going to move on to conditional relative frequency. So this is usually the point where students are like, I got this, Mrs. Marsh. This is so easy. This is great. And then like the wheels come off. And you all lose your minds when it comes to conditional. Okay, same thing. We're just going to take it slow. We're going to stay organized. And you guys are going to do great. So conditional relative frequency. Whew, just jump right into it. Use the two-way frequency table below to find the conditional relative frequency that a student surveyed prefers baseball given that the student is female. Okay, so there's a lot happening here. So we're going to organize this as, so we have two things here. Girls that prefer baseball, right? So our numerator is going to be girls, heart, baseball. Our denominator is going to be this whole given situation, given that the student is female. So total females. Okay, and I'm going to have you write under here, given. And then go ahead and highlight that with your yellow pencil, right? Because that's the one thing that most students forget, is that they get distracted and then they're like, wait, what? Just whatever comes after the word given, student is female, that goes in your denominator, okay? The two categories, baseball and female, go in the numerator. So now let's find those on our chart. So girls that like baseball, 9, right? So I'm going to put a 9 in my numerator. And then total number of girls is going to be this 18 from my row total. So then I have 0.5, and then I get 50%. Okay. So as long as you can remember that you take the two bits of information, put them together for your numerator, and then the given becomes your denominator, you're going to be fine. It's when you start talking yourself in and out of things that it gets a little wonky. So let's do another practice. Okay, we've got another two-way frequency table. Find the conditional relative frequency that the student surveyed is male. That a student surveyed that is male given, here's my denominator information, that the student prefers chocolate chip cookies. So we've got boys, heart, chocolate chip. That's my numerator because it's both categories together. And then the given is just total chocolate chip. Remember, this is my given. I'm going to highlight it again because I really want you guys to focus on that. Okay, so how many boys prefer chocolate chip cookies? Well, we've got 20 fellas. Easy peasy. So that's going to be my numerator. And then how many total people prefer chocolate chip cookies? So that's going to be 50. I get 0.4, which is a beautiful 40%. So 40% of the 100 people surveyed are guys that like chocolate chip cookies. Okay? I mean, clearly, a lot of people like chocolate chip cookies here. Don't get me wrong. Half chose that, right? Also, it kind of depends on what kind of chocolate chip cookie it is, because if it's soft, amazing. If it's burnt, no thank you. So I guess that would play into my decision if they were laid out in front of me. Also, the sugar cookies, I really need them to have icing. I can't eat a sugar cookie by itself. It's got to have icing, maybe some sprinkles, who knows. But anyway, okay, so let's move on. Let me go grab the page that you're going to work on. So the substitute teacher will have these laid out on their desk. So if I'm there and I'm virtually in the classroom, my goal is that somebody's airplaying me and it's really fancy and high tech. If I'm there, I'll say, hey, substitute teacher, can you please give the students these 2 pages? If for whatever reason the technology does not cooperate tomorrow, then this is when you would go up to the substitute teacher and say, hey, can I please have these 2 pages? That's what my teacher told me to do in the video. So here we go. You put this aside. We don't need this right now. But don't put it away. Just put it aside because you're going to have questions and you're going to need it as a reference. All right, so one of the pages that the substitute teacher is going to give you looks like this. Okay, and it's got all the numbers in there for you on the front side. Pretty exciting. So let's do this one together. We'll do this whole situation about sports and grade levels together, and then I'll talk to you about what you need to do for the other pages. Okay, so we've got a 2-way frequency table here. Let's think about what it is: playing a sport, not playing a sport, and grade level. Easy enough. Okay, first thing we're going to do is determine the joint relative frequency. So I used orange for that. So I'm going to stick with my color coding scheme. Of students surveyed that are in 8th grade and don't play a sport. So if you recall, for joint relative frequency, we start out by saying we're going to do category over total surveyed. Okay, so my category is girls that don't play a sport, and that's going to be compared to the total surveyed. Why did I say girls? That wasn't nice. That was supposed to say 8th graders. Let me erase that. I'm still thinking about those cookies, guys. It's late. Okay. And I know you're thinking, Mrs. Marsh, it's not even 8 o'clock, but it's late for me, okay? All right. So we're going to say 8th grade, no sport. And then, of course, that's going to be out of total surveyed. All right, 8th grade, no sport, total surveyed. So no sport, 8th grade is 50, right here. And total surveyed, 300. So when I do the division here, I get 0.16 repeating, which turns into 16.6 repeating percent. So that would be my joint relative frequency of that situation. Oh, guys, I'm sorry. This is all wonky. Let me zoom out a little bit. Focus. Okay, so if you need to freeze that, you can. Now let's find the marginal relative frequency. So remember, I used blue in my notes for marginal relative frequency of students surveyed that play a sport. Cool. So again, we have category, or excuse me, total of row or column. And yes, that's a W, over total surveyed. So my total of row or column is plays a sport over total surveyed. So when I look at my two-way frequency table, I can say, oh, well, 135 kiddos play sport out of the 300 that were surveyed. So when I divide that, I get 0.45, which is 45% of the students surveyed play a sport. Okay, now for the biggie. Conditional relative frequency of 6th grade students given they play a sport. So 6th grade students that play a sport, so 6th grade play a sport. And then my given is the play a sport total. Right? Because that's my given, so that's going to be my denominator. Maybe write yourself a note again, given. Right? So then I'm going to say, all right, how many 6th graders play a sport? There are 37. How many total students play a sport? 135. So I'm going to get this really weird decimal, 2740, and only the 740 repeats. Very strange. So then my percent will be 27.4. I'm just going to put ... percent. How are we feeling? Good? Yes, Mrs. Marsh, we feel great. It's Friday. It's wonderful. It's almost Thanksgiving. Okay, so you are going to do the bottom part by yourself. Don't forget to look up at the top, or maybe look back at your jam. You have lots of resources. On the back, this is one of those where they give you the information. You fill it in, and then you have to go in and fill in what you don't know, and then you'll use that to answer these 3 questions, right? So for example, a local mini golf place, King Putt, collected data on characteristics of people that play mini golf. A total of 40 children putted, of which 18 were female. So there are 18 children, 40 total, 18 that are girls. 38 adults are males, and a total of 43 females went to King Putt. So this is the information you're given, so now you have to go in and fill in the blanks and then answer the questions. You'll do the same thing down here for this situation. Then let's look at the other page. Then you've got this awesome page. Notice that these are not filled in. Okay, so last year I had students go around and ask each other these questions because it said you must survey at least 20 people. Okay, that's not ideal right now given our situation. So you have 2 choices. See my hand? Two choices. You can survey as many people as you can about it and fill in the information and create a table, or you can make up information. Okay, but just make sure it works, right? So if you decide that, say, 10 males and 20 females like dogs, then make sure this says 30, okay? Or if you decide that this is like 15, 20, and 10, or 7, 6, and 5, make sure this actually adds up to 18, okay? So just make sure your data works. All your totals match up and everything, and then you'll do the same thing down here, okay? What kind of phones do people have, right? And then you'll just answer the frequencies. So Monday, when you guys are home, this is what you're going to do. You're going to finish this page, and then you're going to do this page, either by actually surveying people or making up numbers that actually work in the table. Okay, so if you have any questions, guys, please email me. Hopefully, fingers crossed, I was able to give you this information in person. And by person, I mean via the beautiful technology we have in our school with somebody using their Google Meet to AirPlay me, and it's fun. So, all right, whether or not I actually got to see you today, I hope you have a great weekend, and I will talk to you guys soon. Thank you.